Yeah, so I was just saying good evening to you all, and I hope you've had a very good week, a very virtuous week, perhaps engaged in many practices for Kabje Lama's Rinpoche's swift return. And this week we're going to be looking at the verses related to wisdom realizing emptiness. And I also wish to put in the chat for you the file. You'll be able to see it on the screen as we proceed, but nevertheless, it's nice to have a copy if you haven't downloaded it already. And so that's in the chat for you. Okay, so that should be uploading. And I'm using my hotspot, so I think because it's a cloudy day here, so it might be better reception for you. If you find that it's not, please give me a heads up and we can change to the Gompa Wi-Fi, but I don't think it's as strong as the personal hotspot will be. Yeah, great. Nice to see you. So perhaps we can begin by setting a motivation. And let's go from there. All right, I'll just get out of the folders and okay. So yeah, just grounding ourselves in the present moment, letting our mind be reined in and present with where the body is, not caught in the past or fantasizing about the future. Let's just take a few moments. And also appreciating all the opportunities we have to come together in an unmistaken way to meet the precious teachings related to Sutra and Tantra. And this is all made possible due to the kindness of Lama Yeshe and Kabje Lama Rinpoche, the students, the old students who sustained the FPMT, and the present students who keep it going for future generations. So just taking in with a heart of appreciation. We can begin to establish our motivation. It's nice to remember ourselves in the presence of all sentient beings, since it is for their purpose, their welfare, to fulfill all of their wishes, that we come together to internalize the three principal aspects of the path and eventually the 2 stages of Tantra, generation, completion stage. Also in the presence of Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, inseparable from our gurus, inseparable from Lama Tsongkhapa, and appearing before us. Just by bringing Shakyamuni Buddha to mind, we can have no doubt that he appears to help us. And then generating the intention of giving up the 8 worldly concerns which stop our generation of renunciation. So giving up the craving to amass material gain, be lost in sensory pleasures, craving the need for a good reputation and praise, and craving to be free of their opposites. These will only pollute, stop our Dharma practice. So generating the intention to become free of grasping at the appearances of this life, and even seeing samsara as a beautiful park. Try to generate the intention to be free of even the attraction to the appearances of future lives within samsara. This is genuine self-compassion. With such a mind of renunciation, then all our actions can become a cause for liberation, and our refuge becomes pure, relying on Buddha Dhamma Sangha for the purpose of liberation from samsara. That liberating ourselves is not enough, since Buddha Dhamma Sangha comes from sentient beings. Our very enlightenment comes from sentient beings. All our happiness of the present and the past all come from kind mother, precious sentient beings. So taking a sense of responsibility upon oneself to not merely liberate ourselves, but to bring all sentient beings out of suffering, to full and complete enlightenment. Without which numberless sentient beings will suffer endlessly. And so with a sense of bodhicitta, striving for the welfare of all sentient beings, and therefore needing to attain enlightenment, all our actions, body, speech, and mind, can become causes for enlightenment. But without the third principal aspect of the path, the correct view, the wisdom, realizing emptiness, we can never achieve either goal of liberation or enlightenment. We need to cut the root of our circling, our samsara, ignorance, grasping at an inherently existent self. And so reflect on how I, oneself, and others, even the goal of enlightenment we seek, are all empty of existing independently, unrelatedly. They're empty of inherent or true existence. And because they are empty, everything is made possible. Our temporary happiness, our ultimate happiness, developing, changing, transforming our minds, accomplishing the goals for the welfare of every single sentient being, so precious and kind. These goals have been already accomplished by Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, the Triple Gem. And so therefore the path is revealed unmistakably. And so we can go for refuge to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha until we ourselves attain the state of Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha in our own continuum. Okay, so we can recite together the refuge prayer now that we have generated the essence, the heart of the entire Buddha Dhamma, the three principal aspects in our mind. We've already done that, so we can go for refuge to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dhamma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And so this week is our third week, and so it's going to follow a similar format to the previous two, just to have consistency. And I was thinking that we might spend some time discussing two of the verses, verse 9 and 10 today, and then maybe only address those two, and then maybe look at discussion, and then next week finish the verses and then more elaborate discussion as well. So that was the intention. So yeah, we do definitely need to go back and revise. We don't want to just leave renunciation, bodhicitta in the past. So we want to be able to revise that, and maybe through discussion is best. And certainly it's great that you can be here live, because then we can have discussion. So that's really important. So if you're thinking of next week, oh, maybe I'll just watch on YouTube, can I encourage you not? Please come, please be live, so that we can have conversation and I don't have to turn off my screen and fake voices so it sounds like somebody else talking. Or I could just channel somebody. Okay, so that was the intention. So looking at these three principal aspects of the path, and Lama Tsongkhapa has so kindly created these for us. So remember, always keeping that in mind, that these are for me. These verses, when we read them, are a direct teaching from Lama Tsongkhapa to me. And so it's nice to bring that connection and make strong, and do that with all the teachings, whether we're, learning Chandrakirti, Nagarjuna, or any of the great beings. And so Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, Buddha Palita, Chandrakirti, Lama Tsongkhapa, Gyaltsab-je, Khedrup-je, all these amazing beings have presented this final view of emptiness in accord with the Prasangika or middle way consequence school teachings. So if I make reference to emptiness today, it's within that context of the final view. So yeah, any of these great masters, when you read their teachings, feel that they are teaching you directly, as if it's a direct transmission. And I do think that helps in a great deal to develop that heart relationship with these amazing, amazing holy beings of the past. So Lama Tsongkhapa, as I said, he's written these 14 verses for us, and he's very beautifully outlined the reason, the method, the measure. Reason, method, measure. The reason why we need to develop the three principal aspects of the path. So that would be the reason. Then the method is how to generate these three principal aspects in our continuum. And then the measure, or the criteria by which we have generated. So it's all beautifully spelled out in these verses. And so I thought it might be nice to overcome misconceptions. I think there's a lot of misconceptions in Dharma in general, about karma and everything, but specifically now in relation to emptiness. And then look at, well, okay, if it's not that, well, what is it? So then looking at how we can develop understanding. And then why should we bother? What's the need? Why do we have to learn about emptiness and meditate on it and actualize it? And then how do we go about actualizing it? That seems so far off into the future, but it's a continuum of previous moments, and these previous moments come back to right now. And so we can, cultivate this continuum in a daily basis to strengthen these seeds for one day transforming and becoming this very realization of emptiness that we seek. So this is very, very, very purposeful, what we're doing now. It's not going to come about just due to wish or prayer, So we've got to create the causes and conditions right now. And this is how we can practice this right now. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll unpack the verses. I'm assuming we'll only get through 9 and 10 today. So that's the intention. Let's see where we go from there. All right. So if I can jump straight into it, then wisdom realizing emptiness of inherent existence, what it is not. All right, let's overcome this. So emptiness is not like this misconception of like nothingness, voidness. Okay, it's not non-existence. When we say, oh, it's all empty, it's not saying that things are meaningless or unimportant. What we're talking about with emptiness of inherent existence is basically how things exist. So we're not saying things don't exist, that, you know, they're non-existent, or we fall into nihilism where we negate something that does exist. So we're not falling into nihilism with this. We're looking at how things exist, and we're saying that things do not have independent existence, unrelated, inherent, true existence. Things don't exist from their own side. Things don't exist by way of their own characteristics. So things lack all of that. And because things are empty, they can transform, they can change, we can achieve happiness, we can overcome suffering, we can become liberated, enlightened, and so forth. Because things are empty, that means they are related, they do depend. So we can assemble causes and conditions and have an impact that we can transform. So very different to misconceptions of thinking emptiness is nothingness or non-existence. So things do exist. How do they exist? They exist by lacking independent existence. They are empty of inherent existence. And so this is the challenge, because things appear to us due to our imprints of ignorance, beginningless ignorance. Things appear to us as existing independently, inherently. And so this is the challenge. The way things appear is not how they exist in reality. And so this is what we're confronted with and to work through. So we're definitely not talking about refuting existence. You know, it's some of the lower schools would present existence and equate it with inherent existence, so that then if something lacks inherent existence, then it mustn't exist at all. So we're not equating existence and inherent existence, and therefore we're not going to fall into nihilism if things don't inherently exist means they don't exist at all. So not like that at all. So the other thing you hear walking around Dharma centers, oh, it's all empty. You know, I don't know if you guys hear that, but sometimes I hear people say, oh, it's all empty, as if, you know, things don't matter, as if samsara, nirvana, you know, it's all empty. And I think this is also a misconception that's just not getting at, you know, the import of talking about emptiness. I think some people hear, oh, samsara, nirvana, it's all equal, you know, same. Well, maybe on an ultimate level, there is that lack of inherent existence, which is the same, but these are worlds apart. Happiness and suffering are worlds apart. Sentient beings and Buddhas are worlds apart. And yet, of course, our emptiness of our mind is the same emptiness of inherent existence of a Buddha's mind. And so therefore we can become Buddha because of this, you know, Buddha nature, this lack of inherent existence. We can change, develop, you know, transform. So I think dismissing it and saying, oh, it's all empty, as if it's, you know, unimportant, this is, I think, not helpful. So as far as being meaningless here, you know, sometimes just the word emptiness sounds like it's like, you know, it's empty, it's void, it's nothing, it's bleak, it's miserable, like as if it's like, you know, my cup's empty, you know, of a fluid that I wish to enjoy, you know. So it's not that worldly sense of emptiness as well, right? We're bringing a worldly word, empty, and trying to make it fit into the Dharma context. But of course, it has a very particular meaning in Dharma. So it's far from meaningless, far, amazingly far from meaningless. So it's, you know, something so perfectly precious, and in dependence on, we can liberate all sentient beings and bring them to enlightenment. You know, what could be more meaningful than that? Perfecting our own qualities, you know, fully abandoning all our obscurations, anything that hinders enlightenment, and for the purpose of bringing all sentient beings to that state. So this is, you know, supreme. And the other misconception is that it is not fully what emptiness is not, is it's not fully understood through language and conceptions. We can't fully understand emptiness through our speech and, hearing it from somebody else and fully understand emptiness exactly as it is. This is not possible. So to understand emptiness, to taste it, to experience exactly as it is, requires that the non-conceptual realization of emptiness, and that can never come about in dependence on language and conception, conventionalities like that. But it doesn't mean we just go, oh, so therefore I don't need to learn about it. I don't need to hear about it through words. I don't need to read about it. Well, that's obviously, wrong thinking as well. Naturally, we do need to study, reflect, meditate, and then penetrate through beyond concept, beyond language, to this like non-conceptual, perceptual realization of emptiness. Only then can we taste it. No one else can give us the taste of it exactly as it is experienced. So you often in prayers, it comes up, about exactly as it is. That's a very common phrase you may notice in King of Prayers, and I think even just dedication prayers, and it comes up often, that phrasing. So exactly as it is referring to that perceptual, or better choosing the words non-conceptual realization of emptiness. Okay, so when we have that non-conceptual realization of emptiness, then we are going to be in meditative equipoise, non-conceptually realizing emptiness. And what's going to happen is that no conventionality will appear. There'll be no, for instance, generic image that we're using it in a conceptual realization to get at the object emptiness. There'll be no generic image. There'll be no conventionality appearing, no appearances of true existence. It'll just be the appearance will just be emptiness, the lack, the absence, the lack, the non-affirming negation, just the lack of inherent existence. And so we'll talk about a little bit about that later as well. So this is what emptiness is not. So I think that's important to establish. Well, in refuting all of that, then what is it? So what we're talking about with emptiness, we're talking about the wisdom. So not just emptiness, but that's the object, the lack of inherent existence. But we're really talking about, in this third principal aspect of the path, the wisdom, the mind that realizes that object, the mind, the wisdom realizing how things exist, how they their mode of existence, their mode of abidance. These are terms you may have heard of before. I think mode of subsistence is also another translation. So we're looking at how things exist with that wisdom mind, and this is in relation to whatever phenomenon exists. Necessarily, it is a basis for the lack of inherent existence. So it's kind of like the two sides of a coin. Whatever phenomenon exists lacks inherent existence. So then emptiness, does that also lack inherent existence? Does emptiness exist? Is it a phenomenon? Is it, is it an ultimate truth? Okay, so whatever exists has an emptiness of inherent existence. So even emptiness, which exists, lacks inherent existence. Okay? So every phenomenon, all phenomena lack this inherent existence. So we're talking about the way things exist, and how they exist in reality is this lack of inherent existence. And because of that lack of inherent existence, because of that lack of independent existence, opposite to independent is dependent. So because of this lack of independence, things are dependently related, dependently arisen, and so forth. So that's what we're looking at here. Now, this wisdom realizing the mode of abidance of phenomena, this lack of inherent existence, this is the powerful antidote that can overcome all of our suffering, all of our negative karma of actions of body, speech, and mind. It can overcome all of our afflictions, because the chief affliction is ignorance grasping at inherently existent self. So if ignorance grasps at inherently existent self, opposite to that directly is a wisdom mind realizing the lack of inherent existence. These two are completely opposite, and we'll talk about that when we get to verse 9 in more detail. All right, so that's where we're at. Why do we need to realize the wisdom realizing emptiness? To attain whatever goal we are seeking. So a middle scope practitioner seeks the goal of liberation. Great scope, the goal of enlightenment. So whatever goal we're seeking, liberation or enlightenment, necessarily we must realize the wisdom realizing emptiness to achieve either of those goals, independence on the method of renunciation or bodhicitta. So with the two methods, renunciation, bodhicitta, necessarily there is that common wisdom realizing emptiness to then go from that method conjoined with that wisdom to achieve the goal of liberation or enlightenment. So it's common, whether I'm talking from a middle way consequence point of view, it's common whether you follow the Hinayana path to liberation or the Mahayana path to enlightenment, necessarily you need that wisdom realizing emptiness, because it doesn't matter which goal we seek, the root is the same of what binds us to cyclic existence is our karma and afflictions, and the root of affliction is this ignorance grasping at inherent existence. So whether you seek a goal of liberation or enlightenment doesn't matter, in the sense of it's all the same, what binds us in samsara. So therefore, necessarily, you need the wisdom realizing emptiness to attain either goal, to cut the root of samsara. And that way, it's a direct antidote to all afflictions and even the imprints of afflictions. So it's going to abandon the afflictive obscurations as well as the knowledge obscurations. Okay, so Lama Atisha, in Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, he said very beautifully in a particular verse, he said, wisdom without skillful means. So wisdom without bodhicitta, wisdom without skillful means, and skillful means too without wisdom. Okay, so if you've got one but not the other, if you've got wisdom but not bodhicitta, or you've got bodhicitta but not wisdom, he said both of these are referred to as bondage, because one's going to bind you to samsara. If you have bodhicitta but not the wisdom, you will always remain in samsara. If you have the wisdom without the bodhicitta, that's bondage too, because you can only achieve mere liberation. You cannot achieve enlightenment. So Lama Atisha said, do not give up either. You can't practice partially just the wisdom or just the bodhicitta. We need both of these together to attain the result of enlightenment. If we have just one, bodhicitta will remain in samsara. If we have the wisdom but not bodhicitta, we can become liberated from samsara, but we will be in mere liberation where we actually have not even fully achieved our own full realizations. We haven't even overcome all of our obscurations, and we certainly can't liberate others and bring them to that state of enlightenment that we're seeking. So this was really nice advice from Lama Atisha, to not practice partially one without the other. We do need wisdom, we do need bodhicitta, and we want to bring them together, and then we have all the requirements to abandon that which hinders enlightenment, which is your knowledge obscurations, and fully achieve all the realizations of the path, and then we become Buddha. So this was something very beautiful, I thought. So we talked about a little bit about the lack of inherent existence, trying to understand emptiness that way, and to understand the lack, the absence of something, we need to understand what the something is. So if we look around and we say, there's a lack of Paula here. Paula's not here, right? I've got the name right? From the last 10 weeks or whatever. So there's a lack of Paula. There's an emptiness of Paula. Paula's not here. Now, those who don't know who Paula is have no idea what I'm talking about. But those of us who do know her, we can see that there is an absence of her here. Yeah. So in the same way, if we're going to realize the lack of inherent existence, the absence of inherent existence, the emptiness of inherent existence, we need to know what inherent existence is. So if inherent existence existed, how would it exist? Okay. Now, unlike Paula, she does exist. Inherent existence does not exist. So analogies never work perfectly. So if inherent existence was a thing, if it did exist, it can't exist because what it does exist is the lack of inherent existence, okay? And these two are contradictory. But if things did inherently exist, how would they exist? So it's important to understand the object of negation, the object to be refuted. It's important to understand inherent existence so that we can refute it, so that we can realize the lack of it. We can negate it existing. So this is very, very, supremely important. So if things did inherently exist, they would be unchanging. They would never change because they couldn't change. They would be independent and unrelated. So they couldn't be impacted by causes and conditions, for instance. They couldn't depend on parts. They couldn't depend on labeling. They would always exist as a particular thing, never changing and unrelated. Okay? So in this way, it's like they would be frozen, static, unchanging. So if we inherently existed, this is as good as it gets. We could never develop qualities that are, virtuous. We couldn't overcome negative qualities. We couldn't attain Buddhahood, anything like this. Things would actually just be locked into a particular state as it is. And, if you think of, how much we have changed due to causes and conditions. If you think about even the causes for this very body, okay, sperm and egg from the parents, coming out of the womb, being labeled, given a name, and by that day moment, even forward, being known by that name, appearing back as that name. If we just came out of the womb and we weren't named, then we're not going to appear back as who we are today in that strong way. So, once we're labeled, then we appear back. Like, me now as Pema. I appear to you as Pema. In a room full of, Sangha, someone says, "Where's Pema?" And you could say, "There she is there." You could easily point to me. I would appear back to you as if I've always been Pema, without depending on Kabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche giving me the name Thubten Pema, without generating the vow in my continuum through ordination with him, without all these other things. So if things did inherently exist, they'd be like unrelated, independent, solid, unchanging, fixed, and all of those sorts of things. So it's worth, keeping that in mind. So naturally, the opposite, because things lack that way of existing, they can change. We can develop. We can, achieve causes of happiness and happiness. We can cultivate the 10 virtues. We can abandon the 10 non-virtues and be free of creating more causes of suffering. We can abandon all of our afflictions, and overcome all, cyclic existence, samsara, karma and afflictions and suffering and so forth. So it's good to try to keep that in mind. And also remember with Dhammakirti and Pramanavartaka, he mentioned that, Bodhicitta and great compassion, which precedes it, great compassion is possible, as is enlightenment, to develop. We can develop enlightenment because each of us right now have the seeds of love and compassion in our continuum. For every single sentient being, we have loved every single sentient being in our beginningless lives as our friend, our relative, and so forth, our precious mother. but we haven't cultivated it in meditation where we love them all simultaneously. Okay. And because the mind is a stable basis, as we develop this familiarity, this meditation, we strengthen those seeds and they can transform to become great compassion and bodhicitta enlightenment through that familiarity, because it's a stable basis. Unlike going to the gym, developing a muscle, and then we stop or we die and then we take rebirth again. We don't come out with that, big muscle as a baby. That'd look a bit weird, wouldn't it? It's not like that physical muscle, that physical strength that we've cultivated continues on life after life. Even in this life, if we stop going to the gym, before long, it turns to fat, because it's not a stable basis. With physical things, they require new energy every single time to develop, and there's not this continuation without effort. But with the mind, when we cultivate qualities of the mind, then these continue, and due to the habituation, the strength of familiarity, then we don't require new effort. And this is how our anger, we're so practiced at it, can arise automatically, particularly if fear comes up. Say we're driving, some young children in the car or something, and someone cuts in front of us, the fear, that harm would come to them or to ourselves or both. And anger can instantly come up in the sense of a road rage, because we've habituated the mind to it. So in the same way, that's bodhicitta, but in the same way, with this wisdom realizing emptiness, it was the first Dalai Lama, Gendon Drup, and he said that in his Ornament of Logic, he said it follows that the wisdom realizing selflessness or emptiness, if it is not separated from the practice of familiarization, meditation, habituation, then it's suitable to become or to transform and to become this non-conceptual awareness or non-conceptual realization. For the same reasons that Dhammakirti presented, because the mind is a stable basis, life after life. We discard the physical at the end of our life, becomes a corpse, but the mental goes on. And so because the mind is this stable basis, then it's not going to depend on repeated effort every single time, due to having familiarized previously. So due to a habituation, and so familiarizing the mind and having that stable basis, in the same way as Dhammakirti was teaching us about bodhicitta and showing us how we can achieve enlightenment, Gendon Drup here is saying this in regards to the wisdom realizing emptiness. So I thought that was really precious as well. So I've looked at why we need it, right? To overcome the samsara, this body and mind, these aggregates pervaded by suffering, produced in dependence on karma and afflictions, propelled by karma and afflictions, we took rebirth in this very life. So to cut the root of our samsara, cut the root of circling endlessly, right? Then we need to counter this ignorance grasping at a self that to inherently exist when it doesn't. On the basis of grasping at an inherently existent self, we divide everything into self and other, what is mine, my body, my mind, my loved ones, and then we develop attachment as we try to protect and, all this, and we develop aversion to anything that threatens that. So it's this root of samsara. On the basis of that, it gives rise to all these misconceptions and attachment, aversion, jealousy, pride, all of the afflictions, all of the karma, all of the suffering. Suffering is this suffering in samsara, circling again and again. So this is why we need it. Kapje Lama Rinpoche said that, we need this wisdom realizing emptiness so that we can escape problems forever. So, it's incredibly powerful. And if we bring together method and wisdom, then we can have that powerful antidote to abandon even the knowledge obscurations and eventually achieve the two bodies of a Buddha, the, Dharmakaya and the Rupakaya. So, yeah, this is, there's so many reasons why we need it. The other thing talked about by Lama Tsongkhapa in my favorite text in the whole wide world, illumination of the thought. It's when you study Madhyamaka, it's beyond precious. So he talked about, and it may be in other texts that maybe you've come across as well, the 5 perfections, how these are blind. So generosity, ethics, patience, joyous effort, that sort of thing. These are blind in the sense that they're without the wisdom eyes. So even if we have the generosity, and we do it with this bodhicitta motivation and all of these sort of stuff, it'll never take us to enlightenment. So the 5 perfections are blind in the sense that they lack the eye, the wisdom eye that sees reality, sees suchness. So whereas these 5 perfections need that 6th perfection, the wisdom that sees reality, because that's the eyes, the wisdom eyes. So if you had 5 people that were blind in a group, okay, that's incredibly dangerous, particularly if you're near a precipice, they could fall off and all of these sorts of things. But if you have one seeing person, then they can lead all those blind people in a group to the destination that you want them to go. So in the same way, it's the wisdom, when we can generate this perfection of wisdom, then that's going to take these 5 perfections and lead them to the state of Buddhahood. So without the wisdom, without the eyes, these blind won't go where we expect them to go, where we hoped for them to go. And so it was Shantideva, I think maybe around the 9th chapter, something like this, he talked about how like all the branches of the, all the branches of the teachings of the Buddha were taught for the sake of generating wisdom, something like that. So, all the teachings, all the 84,000 teachings are really for the sake of generating wisdom, because it's through wisdom that we attain liberation or enlightenment. Through attaining liberation, we overcome suffering, karma and afflictions and suffering, but it's not complete in its qualities, in its capacity, in its abandonments. It's not complete. It's very partial. So we want to be aiming for enlightenment. But all these teachings were taught for the sake of generating wisdom. Okay? Then we can be free of suffering. Then we can help others. So this wisdom realizing emptiness, is utterly important, beyond important. Without it, we can't abandon our afflictions. So any other thing we generate, like if you want to overcome attachment, you can generate on the ugliness. Remember that gorgeous Robbie Williams video I showed one time about the body, the impurity of the body, and you peel off the layers of skin and all this, yeah? You can do a great meditation on ugliness of the body if you want to overcome your attachment, attraction to a particular body you might be lusting after. But even then, it's only going to suppress it. Like when you have a headache and you take, say you get migraines and you take some paracetamol, then it's going to potentially stop that headache. But when the paracetamol wears off, then the headache's back again, isn't it? The migraine's back. So it's only a suppressing antidote, a temporary antidote. Whereas this wisdom realizing emptiness, we can abandon forever all afflictions, not just one like attachment, but all of them. So the other meditations, like meditating on loving kindness and patience and all of these things, can help us to overcome our anger. But they're only temporary, because the seeds of anger will remain in our continuum, and those seeds will give rise to future moments of anger. So if we develop this correct view of emptiness, we can overcome not only attachment, not only anger, but all afflictions forever. So in that way, it's not a temporary reduction in our afflictions, but a full abandonment. And then anything that flows on from that, all the over-conceptualization and everything, all the suffering, all also gets abandoned. So, it's supremely important. Obviously, the goal, I said, to attain liberation or enlightenment, naturally it's supremely important for that. And without it, we cannot attain these goals. Sangye Kadre, I believe, is doing some teachings on Tantra at the moment. I haven't had the fortune, the merit to listen to them. I'm sure they'd be wonderful and exceptional. I hope in the future I have this time. That would be really nice. But on Tantra, she no doubt would have mentioned the three principal aspects of the path, since it's the prerequisite to Tantra. And so once again, as we saw with renunciation and Bodhicitta, here again, with the third principal aspect of the path, the correct view, we need it as a prerequisite if we're going to enter into Tantra. In fact, every practice that we do in Tantra, every sadhana and so forth, begins with dissolving everything into emptiness, I and all phenomena, and we dissolve into a state of emptiness. And then from within the state of emptiness, we arise as the deity and make offerings and so forth. So, if we want to pursue the tantric path for the welfare of all sentient beings to quickly bring them to enlightenment, okay, not so we can attain enlightenment quickly ourselves, not like that. But if we want to pursue Tantra practice, then we're going to need to develop this wisdom realizing emptiness. And part of Tantra is to overcome ordinariness. So to overcome ordinary appearances and ordinary grasping. So therefore, we need to bring in the emptiness. Okay, so there's some reasons of why we need it. So, how does that help us now? Like, what can we do now? How do we implement this stuff on a daily basis? What can we do now to cultivate this continuum of where we want to go? Well, one of the things that's come up strongly, for me, and I assume for many of us in the last 2 weeks now, since, Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche showed the aspect of passing, is the sense of loss and the sense of upset and the sense of craving and grasping and attaching and wanting to hold on to, his ordinary aspect in this world, right? And all the woe is me of all of, the things that the regrets or things that unhealthy regrets, the things that I didn't get to do. I didn't get to see him at Kopan, or, all of these things. Whatever has been going on for us in those sort of emotions, those sort of worldly emotions, is quite often when we're not practicing Dharma. So we're quite often strengthening those negativities through our self-grasping. And so when those thoughts come up, it's interesting to turn the mind inward and to see how they're coming back to an I, holding I to exist in a particular way. And then I generate this, grasping and this upset and all these other emotions, particularly the attachment, the craving. So on a daily basis, try to guard the mind against this self-grasping ignorance, because that's just creating further rounds of suffering in samsara again and again and again. So, there's many situations that come up for us if something, someone does something that we don't like or takes something from us, or, there's plenty of opportunities when we surround ourselves with people in particular that, we can see this eye grasping come up if we turn the attention inward to notice it. Notice when we're generating, attachment. Notice when we're generating aversion. Preceding these will be a sense of self-grasping. So that's something we can try to work at. We can try to work at reducing our self-cherishing, because these two, self-cherishing and self-grasping, quite often go together for us. So if we can see that there's no inherently existent other, no inherently existent self, there is no difference between myself and others, and so therefore there's no valid reason to divide everything in between I and mine and what is other. There's no there's no reason to cherish ourselves and hold ourselves as more important than others or at the expense of others. Just like me, they seek happiness. Just like me, they want to be free of suffering. Just like me, they lack inherent existence. So we looked a little bit at that last week with Bodhicitta, but also it can come again into our daily practice, specifically in relation to emptiness, because there is no difference between self and other. All of us lack inherent existence as well. All of us have the perfect seeds to attain Buddhahood. So we are the perfect cause of a Buddha. Amazing. So where's Erin? Erin, you are the perfect cause right now. Remember last week what we were talking about? You have the perfect cause right now for you to attain Buddhahood. So there's something to build one's confidence. You have the perfect cause right here and now with you that will one day become a Buddha. So you can use that perhaps as a way to strengthen one's confidence that one can achieve these results. Yeah? You are the cause of a Buddha. How amazing. Just as you love Buddha, so you can love the cause of a Buddha, right? If you love the result, why would you not love the cause? If it's a cause that gives rise to a Buddha and you love Buddha, then you have to love the cause of a Buddha. Without that cause of a Buddha, there'd be no Buddha, there'd be no result. So whichever way you go, I think you're going to find that the cause is something dearly precious and to be loved. And that's referring to like our Buddha nature, this lack of inherent existence of our mind, which can transform. Therefore, we can develop this potential and achieve all the qualities and overcome abandonments. So there's no need for us in our daily life to be overwhelmed with upset or depressed or anxious or arrogant. All of these things come out of our self-grasping ignorance. And so on a daily basis, we can check up, particularly at those times when we're depressed or anxious and so forth. And, see how we're so preoccupied with a sense of I want to go to Barbara. Barbara, you've got your hand up. What have you got? You got a question or a comment for us? Barbara,
I have a question.
Sure.
On this topic of self-grasping,
yeah.
I've just been thinking about this a lot since Lama Zopa has passed.
In
all the prayers for his swift return.
Yes.
And is that not a lot of self-grasping and all about self?
In what sense is it about self for you? Can you elaborate just a little bit more how it's related to self-grasping for you?
Well, I think it's not just for me, but for everyone who is doing these prayers. I just have been thinking about that, and I'm trying to square it.
It's possible.
And it seems like it's a lot of self-grasping to me to wish this for him.
I understand.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I just wanted you to elaborate, and I directed it back to you personally, because we can never tell what's motivating someone else's mind. Okay, so it could well be that it's on the basis of self-grasping. I want Rinpoche to be here. I want to hold on to his holy body again, and all of these sorts of things. It could be coming out of self-grasping, definitely, but there's no pervasion that it is. If you're thinking like with, a bodhicitta mind, a mind cherishing others for the welfare of all sentient beings, to have a holy being return in an ordinary aspect that we can, hear teachings from, and all of these sorts of things, depending on one's motivation, it may actually be without the sense of self-grasping, or it may be mixed with self-grasping, or it may be all self-grasping. There's a real broad continuum, and we can't ever tell what's in another person's mind as to what's motivating them. But we can guard for sure our own mind and check up, like, how am I holding tightly for my own gain here, that I want Rinpoche to return in an ordinary aspect to teach me, because I want to be in his holy presence and see him and all of these sorts of things. And if you've got that tight sort of grasping and it's all related to me, okay, then that's going to be a stronger self-grasping for sure. And self-grasping does pervade a lot of our ordinary existence, mixed with the self-cherishing, a lot of, because while we have this ignorance, it can definitely be caught up with self-grasping, but also it can be free of self-grasping as well. depending on your mindset and your motivation and your understanding and all of these sorts of things, how well you counter, how well you reflect on emptiness to counter self-grasping, reflect on bodhicitta to counter self-cherishing, all of these things. So for instance, Gendon Tripa is over at Kopan. I don't know if he's still there. I don't imagine he's got any self-grasping in his mind as he's reciting the prayer, or Kajula, His Holiness, all these amazing beings had any self-grasping in their mind, very much non-ordinary beings. But for us, they can be mixed, and it can be even very strongly that. And that's why I think when I had checked myself, when I was, lamenting and all of these sorts of things, it was all coming back to the I. So I don't think it's healthy to stay there. And it doesn't mean it won't come up, but I think as quickly as we can turn it into reflect on what is this coming out of, and it is often coming out of the self-grasping, self-cherishing, well, that's not Dharma, and that's not going to please Rinpoche's mind. So then we can turn it around and antidote these things and remember bodhicitta, remember also, as much as we can, our correct assumption or our moving towards having a correct idea of what emptiness is, or some people may even have a realization of emptiness already. So yeah, it's a good point. But Barbara, does that mean therefore that we don't make the prayers? And I think that might not be a correct approach to, if you say, for instance, it's coming out of self-grasping, therefore we shouldn't make these prayers. I think that would also be erroneous as well, because while we are in samsara, controlled by karma and afflictions, we do want the fortunate karma to meet with holy beings and hear the precious teachings in an unmistaken way and so forth. So yeah, I can only answer it like that. Did you have anything you wish to follow up with that?
That was very, very helpful. I guess the only place that I have a little bit of tendency to go to is Lama Zopa Rinpoche knows what is best.
Yeah, exactly.
He knows when it is best to come back.
That's right. And if we don't have the karma for it, it's not going to happen here in this world system. So if we have the self-grasping, which is not the healthy mind, and it's still creating karma to have Rinpoche return, then that can be still very beneficial. But best would be to do it without the self-grasping, without the self-cherishing. But yeah, whatever is most beneficial, that's what we want. And if we have that fortune to receive those teachings, then may that be so. In the meantime, Rinpoche gave everything to us. We have lifetimes of access to everything Rinpoche gave. He never held back. There's nothing he hasn't taught us that we need. So we do have the recordings, the teachings and everything. And, what I feel very strongly is the outer layer has changed. But Rinpoche's body, speech and mind is still with us in each moment. And so it can make, on your note of Barbara, self-grasping, I believe our guru devotion can become more pure because it's going to be without that self-grasping, self-cherishing in a really strong manifest way of Rinpoche, look at me, Rinpoche, touch my cheek, Rinpoche, like this sort of stuff. Yeah. So I think it can be even more pure, but we just have to go through this process. And like you say, whichever is of most benefit, may that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe that kind of a prayer, I don't know, I think I would connect more with that kind of a prayer as opposed to the specific, may he come back as soon as possible. Maybe it just for me has that flavor. And you're right, I can't know what is in other people's minds.
No. And it's
but
best
for
never
me,
to judge. Yeah.
It is may he return when it is the best time for him to return.
Well, also remember, Rinpoche, he only exists for us, for sentient beings, and he can manifest many aspects, many bodies. So it's not like sentient beings in another continent will miss out, because Rinpoche will be or has or is already manifesting in other ways for other beings, So it's not like he's limited to only, 5 manifestations. So he can countless manifestations can appear, but based on dependent arising, the disciple needs to make those requests. Based on dependent arising, the disciples make their request for the swift return, and the guru returns. If we don't make those prayers, then we don't create that dependently related link.
Okay. Okay. I've missed that. I missed that point altogether. So that's very helpful.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's move on because it's 12:05.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome. Thank you. You're very welcome. Thanks for bringing that up. So basically, yeah, like because of this lack of inherent existence, we don't need to get discouraged or anything in our daily life. And as much as possible, if we can bring in that understanding of dependent arising and all of these sorts of things, seeing how things depend on causes and conditions and parts, and we'll look at this in relation to the verse. We can bring in this emptiness, but also even just transforming problems, as things arise for us, try to look at how, they're a gathering of many causes and conditions coming together, and try to not fixate on one cause. And that is the cause of my problems right now. Try to see the tapestry of causes and conditions, a multitude of causes and conditions coming into play, and try to use emptiness as a way to transform the problem, or ask why is my mind labeling this a problem? Why have I labeled it problem? What if I labeled it a challenge or growth? How does that change the way I perceive it? How does it then change the way I act in response to it? Whether I shut down or whether I feel encouraged to do certain things. So yeah, these are just some of the ways that we can use emptiness. But also, just quickly, when we dedicate the merits, try to remember that we're dedicating with the emptiness of the merits lack inherent existence, the I who's dedicating lacks inherent existence, the action of dedicating lacks inherent existence. So to try to bring in this emptiness of the three spheres, to bring to mind lack of inherent existence. And also with Vajrasattva practice, many of us will do that each night, when we try to remember, because things lack inherent existence, we can change, we can become Vajrasattva, we can overcome all of these problems. There is no negative karma that we have created that exists inherently, that is like unchangeable. And so we can change, we can overcome. So these are just some ways I was thinking of how we can make this applicable on a daily basis, because anything we can do to not assent to appearances. Things appear in a particular solid independent way, but if we can try to see things, and maybe we'll talk about this next week, some walking meditations of seeing things as like an illusion, or what appears does not exist. What does not exist, what exists, I said it again, what appears, inherent existence, right, does not exist. What does exist, merely labeled by mind, does not appear. Something like that. There's tricks we can do to try to bring in how everything's like an illusion, appearing to exist in one way but not, like an illusion, like an hallucination, and these sorts of things. All right, we better get into the verses, verse 9 and 10. It was Aryadeva who said in 400 stanzas, those with little merit do not even doubt this teaching on emptiness. Entertaining just a doubt tears to tatters worldly existence. So entertaining just a doubt moves us out of these wrong conceptions about, just trusting in appearances, that things exist, in the way they appear, like all these wrong consciousnesses that we have. Even doubt just challenges that ignorance. And then if you can even go further than that and develop correct assumptions about things, or even just doubts tending towards the fact, right? It even just that doubt tending towards the fact will challenge the ignorance, that grasp at a inherently existent self. So we can start to demolish and unravel and all of these things, our cyclic existence. So even just, meditating on emptiness for even 1 minute can be extremely powerful. And that's why we've got, all these dedication prayers by Rinpoche where we do meditate on emptiness. Okay. All right. So let's have a look at, I'll just screen share again. Okay. So we've got to have a look at the third principal aspect of the path, and just to set up our make it more accessible. Just remember, at the beginning we took refuge in Shakyamuni Buddha, inseparable from our guru, inseparable from Lama Tsongkhapa, and so we can just bring to mind, that aspect transforming to become Lama Tsongkhapa. Invoking Lama Tsongkhapa. Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, whenever you say Lama Kien, Lama Kien, Lama Kien, or Guru think of me, Guru think of me, Guru think of me, you must know the Guru appears. So of course it's the same with Lama Tsongkhapa. When we invoke him, of course he appears. One day our karma will be pure and we'll be able to meet face to face Lama Tsongkhapa. So you can recite the mantra for Lama Tsongkhapa's holy name mantra if you like, as a way to invoke him. Amaguru Vajradhara Samatikati Siddhi Hum Hum. Amaguru Vajradhara Samatikati Siddhi Hum Hum. Amaguru Vajradhara Samatikati Siddhi Hum Hum. And Lama Tsongkhapa can send forth rays of white light and nectar to purify any hindrances to actualizing these most precious teachings. Purify our 8 worldly concerns, which stops renunciation, self-cherishing, which stops bodhicitta, self-grasping, which stops correct view. And also we can imagine light rays purifying any other particular hindrances we might individually have. Maybe we've got the laziness of discouragement, putting ourselves down, not seeing our value, the cause of a Buddha. Purifying any wrong views we may be holding. And then bringing in all the blessings to actualize the 3 principal aspects in general, and in particular, the correct view. We can imagine these golden light rays pervading from Lama Tsongkhapa's heart, pervading our body, speech, and mind. So maybe we can quickly recite the 14 verses up into the end of verse 8. I bow down to my perfect gurus, the essential meaning of the victorious one's teachings, the path praised by all the holy victors and their children, the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation. This I shall try to explain as much as I can. Those who are not attached to the pleasures of circling, who strive to make freedoms and endowments meaningful, who entrust themselves to the path pleasing the victorious ones. You fortunate ones, listen with a calm mind. Without the complete intention definitely to be free from circling, there is no way to pacify attachment seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. Also, by craving for cyclic existence, embodied beings are continuously bound. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciation. Freedoms and endowments are difficult to find, and life has no time to spare. By gaining familiarity with this, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed. By thinking over and over again that actions and their effects are unbetraying, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence, attraction to the appearances of future lives is reversed. When by having trained in that way, there is no arising even for a second of attraction to the perfections of cyclic existence, and all day and night the intention seeking liberation arises, then the thought of renunciation has been generated. Even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. And we'll skip Pabonka Rinpoche's just because we're time poor at the moment. Back to Lama Tsongkhapa, verse 9. And so this is where I want to spend a little bit of time. Emptiness verses. Okay, so we can read the verse firstly. Without the wisdom realizing ultimate reality, even though you have generated renunciation and the mind of enlightenment, you cannot cut the root cause of circling. Therefore, attempt the method to realize dependent arising. So this is one of my favorite all-time verses. I think it's utterly precious. And it's highlighting for us the importance of meditating on emptiness. So without it, we cannot achieve either goal of liberation or enlightenment. Enlightenment particularly is what we're seeking though, because renunciation and bodhicitta are not direct antidotes to ignorance grasping at a self. You know, when we think of renunciation, you know, wanting to strive day and night to be free of samsara and strive for liberation, or bodhicitta that, you know, for the welfare of all sentient beings, wishes to attain enlightenment, these are not contradictory with self-grasping ignorance. So which grasps at inherent existence. The exact opposite to that is not renunciation or bodhicitta. The only exact opposite is, instead of ignorance grasping at inherent existence, instead of the inherent existence, you're realizing with the wisdom the lack of inherent existence. Inherent existence and lack of inherent existence, these two are directly opposite. So it's only the wisdom that has the direct opposite, contradictory mode of apprehending. It's only wisdom realizing the lack of inherent existence that counters the ignorance that grasps at inherent existence. Inherent existence, lack of inherent existence, totally opposite. So therefore, if we were to develop renunciation or bodhicitta, these are not going to be enough at all to cut the root being ignorance, grasping at a self, the cause of why we develop over-conceptualizations, engage in afflictive states of mind, create actions, and, you know, create our suffering. So the root of all of that is this ignorance grasping at a self. And only the wisdom realizing the lack of inherent existence can devour that ignorance and all that follows on from it. The ignorance, the afflictions, the karma, the suffering. So in this way, it's an incredibly powerful antidote. So if we habituate or familiarize or meditate and achieve the realization of renunciation and bodhicitta, it's still not enough. So even though you have generated renunciation, the mind of enlightenment, still, even then, you cannot cut this root cause of circling. And so it's not just that it's an opposite mode of apprehension. That is true. But it's the powerful antidote because it's built on the foundation, the support of being a valid mind, a valid cognition. It's true. You know, with this wisdom realizing emptiness appears as lacking inherent existence, and it is, in actuality, lacking inherent existence. So unlike every other conventional phenomena, which appears to exist inherently, but actually lacks inherent existence, its mode of appearance is different, isn't it, to its mode of abidance, its mode of subsistence, its mode of existence is another way of saying the way things exist in reality is lacking inherent existence, but the way things appear to us is inherently existent. So they're false, but we won't know they're false until we've realized emptiness. Then we can know that the way things appear are false. But the way emptiness appears is going to appear as lacking inherent existence to that mind realizing the lack of inherent existence. So the way it appears, lacking inherent existence, is true to the mind that realizes the lack of inherent existence. It's the only mind that we'll ever get that's going to be unmistaken as an ordinary sentient being, as a sentient being, full stop. The only unmistaken mind is that wisdom realizing the lack of inherent existence. As soon as we come out of that meditative equipoise, everything's going to appear as inherently existent again, mistaken, because they don't exist that way. And we're going to know they don't exist that way, so they'll appear illusion-like if we've realized emptiness. So yeah, it's not just contradictory mode of apprehension. It's built on the grounds of reasoning and logic that supports this mind, and the fact that it's valid cognition, it's a valid mind, and it's true in all of these other aspects. So that's why it's a powerful antidote. So what have I said here? I did that previously about achieving the goal. So what have we got? Directly contradicts ignorance, based in, these are all the things I've said, based in reasoning and logic, supported by valid cognition, is true, and therefore able to cut the root of samsara. So then this here, therefore attempt the method to realize dependent arising. If we don't have the wisdom realizing the ultimate reality, the way things exist at that mode of abidance level, the lack of inherent existence, if we don't have that wisdom realizing the lack of inherent existence, then the fourth line, we can attempt to realize dependent arising to then be able to understand emptiness. So this is wonderful and powerful. So there's different, dependent arising is going to be, it's like, conventional truth. It's going to be the way we get into accessing ultimate truth. So it's the pathway, maybe you could say, to access this ultimate truth. In dependence on conventional truth, reasoning and logic and all of these sorts of things, even causality, the way things exist, on a course level. As far as dependent arising, we talk about 3 levels, or we talk about 5 levels of dependent arising. Things are dependent arising because they depend on cause and conditions. That's one thing. External causality, external cause and conditions. Because things depend on cause and conditions, they are not independent. Independent, dependent, opposites. Because they depend on cause and conditions, they cannot be independent. They cannot be inherently existent. Okay, so this can be one of the powerful ways that we look at dependent arising to come closer to understanding reality. And it starts at a very coarse level and becomes very subtle. So things exist in dependence on cause and conditions. You can relate that internally to karma, actions, and results. Okay, look at one's own karma, and how we create actions, and then bring about the 10 virtues, 10 non-virtues. We bring about results of suffering or happiness. The other, so we've got causality, internal cause and conditions, and internal karma, actions, and results. Parts. So the third one of dependent arising is looking at now not just impermanent phenomena, but now all phenomena, permanent, impermanent, all phenomena, how they all, from a consequence point of view, have parts. So all phenomena are empty of inherent existence because, there's the reason, because they have parts. Okay, so here's another way of getting closer to becoming closer to realizing emptiness, using these sort of reasons of dependent arising. So we can think about, the parts in relation to ourselves. The person, we have body, we have mind, or we have body, speech, and mind, or we have, the 5 aggregates. These are the parts by which we can label onto independence on those parts, the person. We can look at the body, and then we can say, well, that too has many parts. We label the body on the basis of designation, which is, all the muscles, the bones, the blood, the organs, the phlegm, and, urine, snot, feces, all these, yummy things. So trying to overcome the attachment to the purity of the body when it's not. So bringing in all these, nails and hair, all these aspects are all furthermore parts. And then we can break down those even further, say, well, that's just merely labeled independence on blah, blah, blah. Or the mind is a basis of designation, body and mind, part of the basis of designation for the person. So therefore, what are the parts of the mind? The mind also is merely labeled in dependence on its parts, the present moment, the previous moment that gave rise to the present moment that gives rise to the future moment. The different types of minds we have, our afflictions, our good qualities of love, compassion, and kindness, and all of these things that we generate in our mind. So they too, these parts also too, are merely labeled in dependence on their own parts. And for me, the concept comes up like do you call it, excuse me, I've not said this word for some time. Is it babushka? Those Russian dolls, and you take one aside and there's another one inside. To me, it reminds me of that when you go, oh, there's the basis of designation, and then you look and go, oh no, that's also merely labeled by the mind because it depends on its basis of designation, and you take off that next layer, and then, oh, there, like, it's like this, like you can never get down to this inherently existent, findable, phenomenon, because it too is made up of parts. And also the third, we did causality, external, internal parts. And the fourth one now, it too is merely labeled by the mind. So it's merely labeled by mind outwardly. There is nothing that's coming from the side of the object that is, existing within the object that is the actual object in actuality. It's all just merely labeled by the mind outwardly on the basis of designation. There's nothing within for instance, the body and mind that is the person, that is Pema, and so forth. And so we can look at this more next week. There's also another level where when you've realized emptiness, and you can then realize that things are subtle conventionalities or mere conventionalities. They're not conventional truths at all. They're not true. They're only true for ignorance. They're actually false. And everything appears, when you've realized emptiness, as like an illusion. So dependent arising, this the understanding the meaning of emptiness through understanding the meaning of dependent arising. These two support each other. So their meaning is the same. The meaning of dependent arising, to understand that, we can understand emptiness. To understand the meaning of emptiness, understand dependent arising. So this is how we can access something more easily than going straight to ultimate truth. We can access through dependent arising. All right, so we're a bit time poor, so I might just look briefly at the next verse, showing the right view. One who sees the cause and effect of all phenomena of both cyclic existence and the state beyond sorrow as forever unbetraying, and for whom any object trusted in by the grasping mind has completely disappeared, has at that time entered the path pleasing the Buddha. So now we're looking at how to go about generating the first realization of emptiness that will be conceptual. And there's so much to say in this, and there's just not enough time, and it's so unfortunate. But basically, when you realize the lack of inherent existence, it should not destroy causality, that things don't function, that things don't have a cause and effect, that the of both cyclic existence. Here's talking about the 12 links of dependent origination. Both cyclic existence and the state beyond sorrow. So this is talking about the 12 links as unbetraying. So it's talking about causality, how we enter into cyclic existence in dependence on ignorance, create karmic formation, that karmic seed gets planted in the consciousness and so forth. This is the cause. These 12 links are causality. And also the reverse. If we stop ignorance, we stop the karmic formation, we stop creating the karma, we stop planting it in our mind stream, and so forth. So the way we enter samsara, the way we exit samsara, these do not break down by realizing lack of inherent existence. Not at all. If they do, we've done it wrong. So what have I said? If dissolved all appearances of inherent existence without violating the laws of cause and effect and the world of conventional reality, then we've found the true understanding. Then we can enter the path pleasing the Buddhas, because that is a correct way to proceed. Realizing the lack of inherent existence should not destroy causality. It should not destroy conventional truths. Okay? So things do exist. How do they exist? They lack inherent existence. So we don't want to equate existence with inherent existence, because then if we realize the lack of inherent existence, there is no such thing as existence. And this would be a wrong view, would fall into nihilism. So cause and effect. Yep, 12 links. Okay, let's look at this one. When we search for the imputed object among its basis of designation, it is not found. So what we're searching for is the inherently existent self, the inherently existent mala, the inherently existed anything, any phenomenon. When we search for the inherently existent phenomena, had it existed inherently, how would it exist? And we search for it amongst its basis of designation, then we will not find it. There is no inherently existent mala existing within this basis of designation. It's not this bead, it's not this bead, it's not this bead. If I put this bead over here, if I put the string over here, I don't find the inherently existent mala anywhere within this basis of designation. So what we see is the basis of designation. We have labeled the term mala, independence, on this valid basis, and it does function as like a calculator, for mantras and so forth. Yeah. So it's a little bit rushed because we only have an hour and a half for these classes. So that's probably enough to give us a bit of insight. One last thing is that when we come out of this meditative equipoise or realizing emptiness, post-meditative equipoise, subsequent attainment, whatever you want to call it, then because we've realized that things lack inherent existence, when we come out of that meditation, we see everything appearing inherently. And so therefore, we don't trust in those appearances anymore. We see them as false. We see them as existing differently to how they appear. And so that's not going to be super strong for us. And we need to continue to cultivate, progressively deepen our understanding of emptiness to break through to non-conceptual realization, independence on bodhicitta, and, take it through all the way to its culmination of Buddhahood. All right. So what I would like to do, just because time, let's finish these verses. Can I get access? Oh, that's tricky. I've got a hyperlink here, but I can't access it. That's okay, no problem. Let's do it this way. Finish verses. Play. Finish. Oh, come on, stop teasing me. Silly computer. Let's go down to that link anyway. Let's see. Verses 11 to 14. Oh, that's it there, isn't it? Okay. Let's try again, shall we? All right. So if we could finish the verses so that we complete the three principal aspects, I think that would be nice. So we can try to do that from this slide if it works. Okay, where are we up to? Slide 11. If the appearance that is unbetraying dependent relation is accepted separately from emptiness, as long as these two understandings are seen as separate, then one has not realized the Buddha's intent. If these two realizations are happening simultaneously without alternation, and from merely seeing dependent relation as completely unbetraying, then ascertainment comes that completely destroys the way all objects are apprehended as truly existent. At that time, the analysis of the ultimate view is complete. Furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence, and emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. When you are not if you realize how emptiness manifests in a manner of cause and effect, then you are not captivated by wrong notions holding extreme views. In this way, you realize exactly the vital points of the three principal aspects of the path. Resort to seeking solitude, generate the power of effort, and quickly accomplish your final goal, my child. So then we can just conclude with Lama Tsongkhapa is coming forth, established in front and coming forth and dissolving into our crown, down to our heart. pervading our body, speech, and mind, making our mind inseparable from Lama Tsongkhapa, his holy body, speech, and mind. And then we can recite the dedication verses. May the precious supreme bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. We can go to the long life prayer of His Holiness. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And then the swift return without grasping, on the basis of emptiness and bodhicitta, as much as possible. Peerless teacher, an assembly of children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and for mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I hope that was okay. I know it's a little bit rushed because I'm used to going for longer than the hour and a half, but I appreciate the opportunity nevertheless. And perhaps if there's questions, we can ask them next week. And also, I'm always open to feedback if there's things that I'm maybe doing too much of, not enough of, or things that aren't clear. I'm very welcome to, please encourage, please help me help others. So that would be good. Okay. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone.